In my last video, I made Autopilot drive through what I thought were pretty difficult places in Berkeley, California, and was very surprised to see how well it did. Some of you even left comments saying you couldn't believe some of the intersections you saw and thought Autopilot may have handled them better than you would have seeing them for the first time. I was feeling pretty similarly until a local Berkeley resident named Jonathan sent me an email with a truly difficult list of locations to test out. He even mentioned one of these is supposedly one of the most difficult intersections in California, so you know I have to try it out. Before we get started, I wanted to thank you all so much for the support you've given me. I'm coming up on that 10,000 subscriber mark pretty fast, and I've even had 5 orders on my store. It's just insane to think that there's 5 of you out there that are going to be wearing merchandise with my YouTube name on it. Truly boggles my mind and makes me really happy. So thank you guys so much, and if you're interested, please visit aidriver.com for a link to the Teespring store. As always, huge shout out to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the reason I do these videos. Unfortunately, I have to backtrack on the statement I made last video about giving you an update for what you guys are getting in this video. The shipment doesn't arrive here until a bit later this week, and the video I'm making right now was completely unplanned. But I will give you a hint. There's 2 tiers of gifts, and the higher ones are handmade by my wife. So you better like them. Before I start this video, there's something I need to point out, especially if you're watching FSD beta content for the first time. This video is all about pushing the system to its absolute limits, and it is not representative of Autopilot's usual performance. I commute over 120 miles a day for work, and Autopilot can usually drive me there and back with no interventions at all. But at this point, it's too boring to show in videos because the roads are just too average. I'm having to drive further and further away from where I live to get interesting scenarios and content that people want to see. But that's what this is all about, chasing the 9s. So if you're interested in the full self-driving beta as a whole, I'd highly recommend watching some of my other videos too, and not just forming your opinion about overall performance from this single video. Let's start off by taking a look at this absolute disaster of an intersection that Jonathan mentioned in the email. This is absolutely ridiculous, and whoever approved this should be forced to drive here every day of his or her life. Traffic can come and go from so many different roads here that I don't really think there is even real right-of-ways, more just traffic blending and trying not to run into each other. I count 10 roads coming together here, and you're allowed to turn in any direction you want from any of these roads. This is quite the test indeed. We're starting right about here, where I pulled off the freeway to get the camera set up. Then we'll be navigating a left turn through this intersection, going to some other areas with unprotected turns around this intersection, and then coming back for more later. Just like last time, I'm showing you these scenes in chronological order. In the beginning, I was confused at why Autopilot was only going 10 miles an hour, but it turns out that's what my set speed was. So this slowness right here was due to me. Once I set it to 25, it behaved more normally. As you can hear, Autopilot already starting to make noises like it needs help. You can see that Prius pulled way into the intersection. It's actually blocking a lane of traffic right now. But that's kind of what you have to do here. This is a really kind of a crazy place. So after the white car gets out of the way, Autopilot can see that it has a clearing and decides to go for it. Hits the brakes twice, though, through this whole thing. And the other van you saw there actually did have to brake for me. It did make it through by itself. I didn't really have to help out, but too slow through here. I wish it had a little bit more oomph. You can also hear it hitting the brakes a few times right here. No problem, because there was nobody behind me, but if there was somebody tailgating me, that could have definitely been an issue. Now we are going to make a unprotected left turn from one of the streets. This is that intersection from before is to our left. You can also see Autopilot having a little bit of difficulty with these train tracks. It starts detecting them as lane lines and wants to get all the way over to the right. Now while we wait for Autopilot to make its move, I wanted to quickly talk to you guys about something. Someone left a comment on my previous Berkeley video that said until Autopilot can perform moves like this perfectly, it will never be capable of real full self-driving. I think this is entirely incorrect, and people hold Autopilot to unrealistic standards. Humans can't even make moves like this perfectly. I wish you could see the disasters unfolding to my left at those series of intersections right now. I told him one way to solve this is avoiding situations like this by rerouting and going through a series of right turns instead, and he thought that was a ridiculous response. But guess what? That's exactly what Waymo does. And oftentimes, like you're seeing in this example, it would not only be safer, but also save a bit of time as well. I could have very well been stuck here all day and got lucky that a gap opened up where Autopilot was confident enough to fit into. Even though there are a few cars sticking out and kind of doing weird things, this intersection has definitely calmed down from just a second ago. There's usually a ton of cars piled in here going around each other. It's pretty nuts. So I mentioned in my previous video that this update was feeling more confident overall, and I still do feel like that, but sometimes it does get stuck still, like right now. It was planning on going for it, I could feel that it wanted to go, then it saw that bicyclist and just decided against it, even though it had plenty of time. Traffic clears right now, the intersection is clear, and it's going very, very slow. I mean, there's probably reasons for this, like that car went way over the stop line, and Autopilot sometimes has some trouble with situations like that because it thinks the car may be pulling into the intersection or something, but that is definitely something that we're going to have to overcome, and Autopilot's going to have to kind of get used to, is humans on the road. That's going to be a tough one. Alright, coming up here to another intersection. Thankfully this time everybody has a stop sign at least, which should make things a little bit better. Autopilot does not take the right of way here, even though it's our turn to go. You can actually hear me sigh in a second. I really wished it would have taken the right of way. It kind of just confuses everybody around it. Autopilot taking its time through this unprotected left here. There were a couple of opportunities where it could have gone. You see it lurch forward right there like it wanted to, and then got nervous from that other car, and it waits for a plenty big gap before it's able to make a move, which honestly is probably fine right now. I'd rather it be safe than sorry. Didn't expect it to go over this lane right here and even know that this was an HOV lane. Like I honestly thought it was driving off the road for a second, and it was confusing a little bit. So, but kind of cool, I guess, that it did that. Also does a great job at the metering light. Okay, gonna try to do another unprotected left here, and then it has to make the immediate right to get back onto that road that we came from. So it actually confidently takes the left, even with that car there. This guy behind us is not giving us a ton of room. Autopilot's very, very nervous, gets kind of stuck in this lane, stops at the stop sign, and then decides it still wants to turn right, so I do have a disengagement right here. I was not gonna let that happen. So I'm pulled off to the side of the road, basically exactly where we left off. You can see it showed a U-turn in the nav route for a beautiful second, but then reroutes to avoid that U-turn completely. So I figured I'd just let it drive through here, see if it can get us all the way around. Seems to get stuck on this shoulder for a fair bit of time, but makes its way out beautifully. Even signals for it, so awesome. Alright, and since this is a more advanced maneuver, it definitely has to turn through some tight quarters. I want to slow this down and let you watch it live. I thought this was actually a pretty impressive move. I mean, it did avoid the U-turn, but at what point is the U-turn easier than all the stuff it's doing right now, you know? So not exactly sure of the reason why. Could have something to do with the bus kind of slightly in the road here, but Autopilot's feeling a bit nervous. You can see hard acceleration followed by harsh braking, then very slow to make this left-hand turn. This guy making the right-hand turn right now is actually pretty frustrated. He was waving his hands like, "What are you doing?" And I took both my hands off the steering wheel and showed them to him just so he kind of was aware of what's going on. And the look of his face was just hilarious. That was an awesome moment. So you can see these slow-moving cars around here are avoiding all these bumps in the road. Autopilot doesn't really handle it too well. I mean, it makes room for this guy getting back in, but it doesn't understand these kind of human things that happen sometimes. So it's a really difficult problem, especially if you're looking at it from like the neural network side. Like, when are they parked? When is there an emergency? When are they just driving weird? These are all things that us humans kind of take for granted because we just kind of know, but it's something the neural networks are going to have to figure out. A bit of an awkward situation for the right-of-way. I actually thought that I had the right-of-way when I was here, but taking a look back, I might have not. I mean, it was able to handle it. Got a little bit close to the car at the end because of the debris on the right side of the road, but it made it through. Now we are back at around where that intersection was, so let's go ahead and do a few more tests. So I have the nav route going straight ahead, so it's going to have to take into account both sides of traffic again. Seems to be creeping forward a lot more this time. You can hear me kind of like winching in the car. At some point, I'm like laughing because it's basically right on the edge of being okay, to where people are going to have to start stopping for me. I let it go a little bit more, but there's a car to my left. I do not feel comfortable. I disengaged. Now let's maybe try a bit easier of a nav route where we can make a right-hand turn instead of going straight through 2 or 3 lanes of traffic. You can hear the brakes going extra hard whenever there's a pedestrian in front of the car. I think that's so that if I get rear-ended, they don't get or are less likely to get injured. I think Autopilot does fantastic in corners like this. Creeps way forward just like a human would do, waits for traffic to clear, and then proceeds. Here's another interesting one. So the nav route's all the way down this street. This is I think it's a recycling center to the right, and cars are just piled up waiting to go to the recycling center. This car goes in front of us. Autopilot follows them because we don't need to sit in this traffic. We're going to the end of the street. This was pretty dang amazing, if I do say so myself. Before we leave this area to get into more of the tight quarters section of this video, I did want to give this intersection one last try. I can't tell you how it feels behind the steering wheel. This is extremely nerve-wracking to let the car do this. You can hear me like talking in the car. I kind of broke AI driver character right here. I never really talk in the car, but I am pretty dang nervous right now. But am ready to take over if needed, don't worry. Gonna have to go now. Okay, here we go. Maybe. Come on. Yes. let's get the heck out of this area, shall we? I want to mention the most common feedback I received on my last video was just that I complained about it being too long too often. So I'm really going to take that feedback to heart and make this video as long as it is and not even really look at the clock at the bottom, even though it's really ticking up. I'm just going to play these clips out and then only slow down when something interesting happens, just like before. So we have a green light now, but there is still a bus pulled off to the side of the road and not a huge area to get through, so let's see how it does. It does go a bit slower than I would have, but overall does a really nice job, I think. Doesn't do as nice of a job braking for that Mercedes that pulled out in front of us, though. This was a bit of an odd one. Autopilot's generally very good at giving a lot of space for cars parked off to the side of the road, but I didn't feel it was giving that FedEx truck enough space. I don't think I would have clipped it or anything, it was just too close for comfort for me, so that was a disengagement. I'm gonna let this clip keep playing out. I think it's worth it because a few other things interesting happen as well. Does a pretty good job with a lot of things in the scene, a lot of cyclists and all that. I don't know if you can see yet, but straight ahead of us there is, I think it's an Amazon truck or something, stopped in the middle of the road with the hazards on. So this maneuver right here really does make me feel like there may be multiple versions of the beta going out, because I've seen other beta testers have this scenario and their car does not do that. So I really have no idea how it works, if we're all getting the same firmware or maybe some things are tweaked, but my car generally has no problem going around these parked cars in the middle of the street. Does so pretty confidently as well, and I really, really like it. Alright, coming up on a four-way stop where we have to make a left turn. Autopilot stops plenty far back to let the pedestrian walk very comfortably. This was nice. After cross traffic clears, it is obviously our right-of-way. Autopilot does initiate the turn a little bit slowly, but it still does it. Then this guy starts pulling out way before we've cleared the intersection. I think Autopilot handled this like wonderfully. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Basically, if somebody does something unpredictable, it slows down until that person becomes predictable again. I mean, I say that, and then I also complain about it taking so long through some of these intersections. So it's gonna be this is a tough problem, you guys. It's gonna have to be a balance. While we're moving through this footage a little bit quickly, I just wanted to thank you guys again for all the comments you left on my previous video. I asked for advice on how to make them better, and you guys really came through with a lot of truly great ideas that I'm probably going to put into practice. So thank you. And I know I give a shout out to like people who like buy merchandise or go to my website or Patreon supporters or whatever, but honestly the best thing that you can do for my channel is watch the videos. So if you're made it this far into this video, thank you so much, you guys, for real. I'm approaching the end of my navigation route right here, and do take over just so that I can go somewhere else a bit more interesting. And we'll go ahead and start back up from the exact same spot we left. So you can definitely see from some of these clips, the roads are getting tighter and tighter and tighter until it becomes pretty unbelievable. Some roads I was traveling on during the making of this video made me wonder, like, how do people drive through here regularly? I have no idea. Approaching this stop sign, we can see a mail truck stopped in the middle of the road. Obviously no room to pass. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Autopilot makes a hilarious joke by folding the mirrors and displaying that it's going to try to fit through this gap. Hate to break it to you, Autopilot, it's not happening. Now it is very confused. It's just folding the mirrors in and out. Thought this was pretty hilarious, as you can hear. Luckily, looks like the mail lady's getting in the truck right now, so let's just go ahead and wait a second here on Autopilot to see if she can get out of the way enough for Autopilot to make it around. Oh no. Man, how do people drive through here? I don't understand. I'm feeling pretty sorry for Autopilot at this point. Oh God. What are you gonna do? You can make it, come on. Just, yeah, there you go, come on. Oh, shit. Oh, too close, too close. Oh, nice try, Autopilot, but unfortunately, no dice. It was a great try, though. I'll give it that. Maybe if the mirrors were still folded, we could have gone through there. Hint, hint, hint. Gonna play this clip pretty quickly of it getting to its set destination. Does a really great job through here. Some pretty complex streets and weird intersections, just like before in Berkeley, but nothing too out of the ordinary for me to talk about in particular. Ta-da. Then I found my way back to that street to see if we could catch that mail truck again. Very nicely done. I think the mirror folding and unfolding and folding again is kind of a bug, and I definitely will report that. I have the navigation path through a little bit different of an area than it went through last time. I'm just going to continue speeding up the whole thing because although some interesting things do happen, not really worth taking the time to stop out of this video and talk about. I also want to mention that I have Autopilot set speed to 5 mph over, so I think it's set to 30 right now. It's using its speed control in order to modulate the speed through really tight neighborhoods like this, and I think the performance on that has improved quite dramatically, actually, especially over the last few firmware updates. You can see here I kind of come to a stop because that was the end of the nav route, and I started another one. But overall, the performance through places like this is really, really good. You can see tight quarters, it really starts to slow and take as much time as it needs to get around these corners. I say that's a good thing, just like before, until there's a car behind me and I want it to hurry up, but always better to be safe than sorry. Yeah, roads like this are never going to be easy. Unfortunately, it doesn't do quite as good of a job with this truck. It thinks the very edge of the drivable space is where all that stuff on the road is. So I did have to take over there. It wasn't going to go past that red edge that it was showing on the display. And my gosh, whoever owns the Model 3 at this house, you are living the dream, man. I had to stop here and just look for a second. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So the beta testers do have this report button on the display where you can press the button and it sends the data back to the Autopilot engineers. But I typically don't try to press it unless it's something very, very wrong. And here's an example of this. We had to make a left out of that parking lot. It doesn't make the left. And then the planned path goes to the left after we're continuing straight on this street. Things like this should not happen for a public release build, and I believe stuff like this is why we're still in beta, because I'm sure it's very hard to fix a situation like that and tell Autopilot that it can't make those maneuvers without breaking a lot of other things. So we are getting there, but this still is beta, and it's still expected to make mistakes right now. So on the subject of this still being in beta and making some mistakes, I'm going to show you a rather large one that was at the very end of this trip. What this video you're seeing right now is supposed to be was the video where I kind of like fast forward it, getting back to the freeway, but unfortunately Autopilot cut a curb a little bit too close and kissed it just very, very slightly. So I was well prepared for this. I'll show you after. I have stuff on my wheels, so there's 0 damage on the car or the wheels, but my ego is a little hurt that I think I am the very first FSD beta tester to let the car hit a curb while using Autopilot. For those of you worried about my car, I want to assure you that no damage was done and I was well prepared for this. I have these things installed on my car called alloy gators, and although they were a pain to install, they made situations like this easy because no damage was done to the wheel and I could just replace that little piece of plastic. So no harm, no foul. This is a mistake that humans make all the time. All the curbs in that city were hit at one point or another. So Autopilot for now is still not and never will be a 100% perfect driver, but I am not scared of driving my car in environments like this again, and I look forward to going back to Berkeley and trying out some of those other places that Jonathan recommended. Thank you so much for watching this, you guys. You guys are awesome. Bye.